And we're live. Welcome to the Best in Slot podcast, a Warcraft podcast by the community for the community. I'm your main host, Sparty, and I'm here with my co-host, Midgettes, and special guest here, Justin, or Anomoly from WoWAnalyzer. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, Justin. How are you?
Hey, doing well. How you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time and give us an opportunity to chat with you. We're excited to have you here. This is awesome. This is what we're all about. We love all things Warcraft logs and WoWAnalyzer and people improving themselves. So thank you so much, and we're excited to talk to you.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Cool. So today is episode 31. 31 weeks we've been doing this. This is awesome. And yeah, we like to have special guests here on the show that are contributing quite a bit to the community. I mean, you guys may not realize, or even Justin may not realize how much they do to this, but I mean, it's amazing. WoWAnalyzer has been a huge tool, and it's been a huge change in development, and they've grown so much from the first iterations. And I'm excited to talk about all of that. But yeah, we can start off with, what's new in our community. Do you know what's new in our community?
Actually, we have to start off with your silly joke, I think.
See, I've got an appropriate one. Since WoWAnalyzer is all about help and improvement, I went to the bookstore the other day, and I asked the saleswoman, where the self-help section was. And she told me that if she told me, it would defeat the purpose.
Oh, my God. That one's awful.
It is pretty awful. Sorry, I had no really good jokes this week.
If you have to explain it, it's really awful.
Get it? Because self-help, and she could not help me because I should help myself to go find the books on self-help. Yeah, that one's really bad.
Yeah, you should tell the orange joke instead. Maybe we'll have to do that.
Maybe.
Hey, did you watch the MDIs?
Oh, man. The MDIs were friggin' awesome. Huge step up from last time, and 100,000 viewers concurrently on the English stream itself. That was incredible. I loved it. I watched a majority of it today. That and obviously, Poland losing to Colombia 3-0. But I had both up on both screens today for a little bit. What about you guys? You guys watch the MDIs?
Yeah, definitely. Caught the finals, which I think were the best set of matches, actually.
Yeah, they were super close. I'm glad they went into a best of 5 over a best of 3. I was initially surprised because I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, oh, okay, so this team's won 2. Is it over? Oh no, because Sloot's not very excited yet. And I imagine, okay, then it's going to be best of 5. So that was good. But it's a lot of dungeoning by these guys, right? Like, it was a lot of playing. And I think, Shell's Angels, a number of them must have played, 3-4 hours worth of games just today?
Just today. And there were so many close games. I mean, I was sitting there watching and going, I mean, they had seconds apart.
Right?
That's how good the teams and comparable the teams were. It was just incredible. I don't know. Did you have, what was your favorite moment of the MDI, Justin?
Actually, the final map was interesting just because it how do you say that? Hell's Angels? Kells Angels?
I think it's Shell's Angels pronounced, but it's Kells, yeah.
So Shell's Angels did the same exact strat earlier on, skipping the bottom trash and Nel's layer, which to perform that twice in a row is actually pretty amazing, especially on the biggest stage, because I think they did it to Method the first time they played. So no, it was I think that was one of the best maps. Came down to the wire, so super happy that Shell's Angels won that. So definitely rooting for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of us were just rooting for the underdogs. I mean, Method's, have been a powerhouse. They're a powerhouse brand. It would have been interesting to see, Method versus Method in the grand finals, and I'm sure Sko would have been super happy. But I mean, everybody roots for the underdogs, and we want these guys to win too, and it was exciting. One of the highlights for me was the Upper Karazhan, where both teams had combined 20 deaths each, so 51 deaths total, I think it was, on that little the little worm room in the library.
Right.
That was,
yeah.
I mean, some of these pulls are really, really ballsy, but if you execute them, that was incredible. Some of these, the vault pulls, and those pulls that, didn't work out really well. Yeah, very ballsy. You need things to go your way with cooldowns and stuns and things like that. But it was exciting. It was really well done by Zobrix, the Turnip, and everybody else out there. The casters were phenomenal, better each time. I can't say a bad thing about it. I don't know. Was there any lowlights from the MDIs at all? Any improvements they could make?
I don't think so. At least not in my opinion. I thought they were well. I liked the break in between all of the different brackets, and I liked the way this worked out because Method actually killed out Shell's Angels early on, and they
Mhm.
came in from the upper bracket and won. So, or the lower bracket and won. And it was really fun to watch. I sat and watched them as soon as they came on Friday afternoon. That's what I've been doing all weekend.
That's awesome. What about you, Justin? Any improvements? Any suggestions for next time?
They need to get Sups in more interviews because I think he's definitely a breath of fresh air.
Oh, I missed that one.
From
People were talking about it on
Fremont.
Twitter.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Sups just need to go all the way next year. So
Yeah, I mean, I was rooting for the Australian teams again. I was hoping they would go, long. But yeah, I got to go back and check out that interview because apparently, it was very vibrant and vocal. He's got a good passion.
Very yes, it was very vibrant. It was awesome. Well, hey, there's not much other than the MDIs going on, but we did have a few things that were new in beta. I noticed that you mentioned on your Twitter, Sparty, that you like the new loading screen. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's got the Undercity or a castle or whatever there, massive battlefield. It's all bringing us back to, orcs versus humans, horde versus alliance, all of that. It's a great loading screen. It's no more dark portals. It's no more gates, whatever. It's, well, I guess the gates to a city, but it's awesome. I really liked it. It's I guess a throwback partly to one of the original loading screens or partly to the Warcraft 3 where meteors are falling down. I really enjoyed it. I think it's awesome. It's well done. It shows good destruction and demolition from both sides, and yeah, I think it's a great change. What about you guys?
I don't actually remember many loading screens, so
it's the main one. So the one where you're inputting your your can formation, like it's the main screen, the title one.
The best thing is it's not green. I'm over.
I mean, people are down with the green now.
I liked MOPs. I mean, green's good.
Yeah, the Seminary had a good one. I liked Wraths as well. That was a great loading screen.
I think that one's classic. That with the dragon coming in. So
absolutely.
Yeah, Wrath will always be my favorite though, because I'm a Wrath baby. You guys have been playing, both of you, since vanilla, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Now, when I was talking to Justin earlier, he told me he was famous. So
I knew someone famous.
Oh, go on.
No, so I started in Pals for Life, which I guess most people know as the Leroy Guild. So I've been playing games for a while.
You're in Leroy's Guild?
Oh God,
that's exciting.
Yes. I was. So I moved on since they've kind of went casual. But yeah, I knew all those guys back in the day. So
that's crazy. You were like best friends with Leroy growing up then.
Yeah, it's a stretch.
So see, because when people see me, they're like, "Oh, you're Sparty? You're in Towley's Guild." Yeah, that's me. I'm totally in Towley's Guild. I love being in Towley's Guild.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing. We're best friends,
Well, I wanted to get that out there because I thought that was a fun bit of tidbit. So, but we did see that they're changing the Seals of Fate to only 2 per week. I didn't happen to catch, was there a lot of outburst about that, or is everybody upset? I don't know. Sparty, I don't think you care because you just get gold, right?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I saw a little bit of backlash, but there's been quite a bit, through BFA and its development. I mean, it's 2 per week. It just means, okay, I'm spending less gold or whatever, resource it is on tokens and getting gold back. Like I always roll gold, or I always roll, really crappy things, which is fine. I mean, like it's whatever. It's going to be more expensive for 2. I can't recall if they're lowering the cap itself. Really, the impact is going to be you just need to choose which ones you're getting. A little bit more deliberately, right? Which bosses you're using it on, and there might be an opportunity for getting more coins in different ways, right? Whether it's class type missions or whatever it is. So I don't know. What about you, Justin? What do you think about dropping down to 2 per week?
I think it's less loot overall. I think is the idea is what they're going for, because with personal loot now being kind of the default, I think you ultimately it might balance itself out, right? You potentially should get more loot from personal loot, and then you also had the same amount of seals, you get essentially more loot from an average perspective. But the 2 per week, like you said, it's you'll just roll one less boss a week and probably get gold or AP or whatever the new AP thing is. So
Yeah, I
Well,
guess
I know if it's my luck, it won't be anything I need or want, so it doesn't matter.
yeah, sometimes I'd rather just the gold, and other times you get so excited when it says loot, and then you're just disappointed. Like it builds you up, and then it just crushes you when it gives you, some crappy belt you don't need.
Yeah, exactly.
More DE stuff. Well, we did find out that the secret community is actually getting to play in beta. Muffiness has been
Mm-hmm.
teasing them, and they found a toy. So they're often working with this gem. It's if for those that enjoy the secret finding, I'm not going to tell you a lot about it. You get to go join the secrets Discord because that's where you do it. But it's a toy, and they're working on it. Apparently, according to Muffiness, they've only found one of question mark secrets. So for those that like the secrets and the little Easter, they're called Easter eggs that they're put in the game? Is that what they're
Yeah,
called?
yeah. I guess that they're a bit of Easter
Yeah.
egg, and
He likes to tease, so just follow Muffiness and then
I
join
wonder
the
how much
secrets.
of his work week is dedicated to just making some of these really impossible secrets and just punishing the Warcraft community of, I still haven't done that stupid maze of whatever it is. I mean, I sure I can dedicate a couple hours to doing this stupid maze, or somebody just draw me a map. I'll do it. Just give me a map.
You haven't gotten the unicorn yet?
No, I haven't done the unicorn. Still
Why
need to at some
not?
point.
We got to talk about that. Have you done it, Justin?
I spent 2.5 hours in there one night and got really frustrated and just
See,
left.
that's
So
me.
I'm
Exactly.
done. I'm not doing it. Done.
You got stuck in the maze and you never finished it? Are you as far as the maze?
Yeah. So I got to the maze and I as soon as I read that, like, oh yeah, one room warps you back to a random part of another, like the map, I was like, this is just, it's rude, it's mean, like my map doesn't work. So I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, Muffiness. Exactly.
We'll tell you, we'll just not do it. Well, there's
Exactly.
more secrets coming because the secret community loves them. They're a lot of fun.
See,
So keep an eye on Muffiness for that.
I would
What?
when we're doing secrets like that, I would rather do, a Blingatron puzzle or something than a stupid maze. Like
I
100%.
don't know. I had a great time with that maze because I just kept going right and I got out and then I watched Ayla do it for like another 2 hours. It was fantastic. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. So, what else new? So, we were reading that WoWAnalyzer has started support for BFA. So, we're talking about WoWAnalyzer in a sec, but since we're on the beta topic, what are you guys doing for beta or for BFA rather? How is the BFA prep going?
Pretty good. So we have a site up. It's just bfa.wowanalyzer.com. And basically our BFA code is all there essentially. So pretty much any class, or most of the classes are getting updates to like abilities and new checklists, suggestions, basically all the features that are in the current WoW Analyzer are getting updated for BFA. We have an issue that kind of tracks on our GitHub most of the classes or all the classes about where we're at. So I haven't actually taken a look at it today, but last I checked, we're about 40 to 50% through all the different specs. So it's going pretty well. The biggest thing for us is just we got to make sure it works for pre-patch and for BFA. So we're kind of tempering, making a bunch of changes. So it's pre-patch first, and then once we get through pre-patch, we'll have everything ready for launch. So, but yeah, it's going well. I mean, slowly but surely, all the specs will get updated. It's a lot of work at this point.
Cool, that's exciting. So, quick funny question: do you think this will be done before or after class balancing is done in BFA?
Well, class balancing is what the week of heroic, so it'll definitely be done before.
Okay,
that.
good. So let's get right into it. So WoWAnalyzer's been around, for a little while. Tell us all about it. I mean, we're here with Justin, who's one of the admins of the Warcraft Analyzer project, as well as the moderator of Peak of Serenity Discord. I mean, Justin's an awesome guy from our little chat beforehand. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. Tell us about WoWAnalyzer, what it is. Go for it.
Cool. Yeah, so I've been playing WoW, like we mentioned, since Classic, so I've been around a while, at least playing, and then jumped in to kind of help out with WoWAnalyzer last May. So I jumped in basically right as WoWAnalyzer started to expand beyond what Zero's initial work was. So Zero to Rescue has kind of been the head guy, kind of driving most of the work here. And he started out with WoWAnalyzer, I think is doing some stuff, particularly just for Holy Paladin. So started out as just kind of an analyzer for the mastery, the Legion mastery. And he slowly expanded it. You know, that was launched, I think, last or January 2017, and by March or April 2017, he kind of had the idea of saying like, hey, let's use this for more than just holy paladins, right? Can we get more healers on this, right? So he launched WoWAnalyzer. You know, I think Disc Priest and Druid were two of the first classes added, and then Mistweaver. I added Mistweaver, you know, of May of last year. And yeah, it's kind of just grown from there. So I mean, the ultimate goal of WoWAnalyzer is really to kind of support, you know, every spec in the game, and to basically take what you would get from like a manual log review, and be able to automate that. So like anytime you have questions or anytime you're like, hey, I don't know if I did this right, or what could I do to do better in this fight, that's where kind of WoWAnalyzer kind of sits to step up and provide those suggestions, provide those insights of, you know, things that might not pop off the page if you're kind of just scrolling through your logs, you know, after a night of raiding. So, yeah, so that's kind of I guess the quick 30-second background. On the site, actually on WoWAnalyzer.com, there's a huge post that Zero put in when we did our 1-year anniversary. So if you guys want to scroll through that, it kind of details out pretty much. He went day by day at some points, kind of talking about everything that was implemented. So it's a good read if you guys really want to get into the background.
Cool,
the
awesome.
more detailed stuff.
So WoWAnalyzer generally it's a tool that automates this log review process. You know, who is it geared towards specifically? Is it geared towards, you know, newer players or intermediate players or ones proficient with Warcraft logs?
I mean, I think we try and make it geared towards everybody, right? The idea is to kind of give the player some insights that aren't, like I mentioned, easy to pull. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. Easy to pull out of Warcraft logs, right? So it's not going to show you like, hey, you did 1,000,000 DPS, right? It does, but that's not really the main point of it, right? The point of it is to kind of get into, you know, how effective was your Velens trinket, right? When you use Velens, did you get 5%? Did you get, you know, 5% bump? Did you get a 2% bump? Things like that. So it's to kind of get under the covers and kind of do the dirty work of understanding, you know, are you playing optimally? And I think it applies to pretty much any type of player. I think newer players, you know, it's good to kind of get the general suggestions like, hey, you're just not using your abilities enough, right? I think that's kind of a lot of the basic advice. And for more advanced players, it kind of shows you like, hey, if I as a Resto Druid, if I use my flourish here, maybe I should hold it for another 30 seconds. I might lose a cast in the long run, but this 30 seconds coming up, this is probably like the more healing intensive part of the fight. This is where I'm going to need that cooldown. So it's all about how you apply and use the tool. We try and make it useful for everybody. So I mean, that's our target audience is really anybody who logs their fights and wants to get better. That's kind of who we're going after. So
it started out as healers, but you're also doing DPS and tanks, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we've kind of expanded into outside of healers, right? So that was kind of late fall last year that we started kind of adding a bunch of DPS specs. It's actually, again, this is all community driven, so it wasn't like Zero or myself or anybody saying like, hey, we should add DPS specs. It was like people who played DPS specs were like, hey, we want to try and use this. And we made some modifications, made it, you know, generic enough that it didn't matter what sort of role you played, you could use the tool.
That's
so that's
awesome.
kind of how it started. It's always been a community driven effort. So like people have come in and added things that really wasn't our intended goal. I think, you know, Zero's intended goal is to build a platform that anybody can kind of add onto, and that's kind of how we operate. So if you don't see something there, you know, you're more than happy to jump in and help us out. So.
Well, I know that it was one of the things that was mentioned on the website when he was talking about all of the things that you guys have accomplished. By the way, the website is just incredible. He was talking about how he analyzed the Drape of Shame. So are you guys going through and analyzing like our favorite Arcana crystal and things like that within the encounters, or is it specifically for just the encounters?
Yeah, so I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So yeah, so I mean, we basically expanded out. Like Drape of Shame, of course, is the best. It's the first example of an item that was analyzed, right? But we've tried to add every major item that's come across, right? So we do set bonuses. We'll do all the trinkets essentially from all the different instances. Arcana Crystal is a weird one because it doesn't really have an effect. It's just raw stats. So we do have we'll say a stat weight or stat value component that some of the classes have implemented that would kind of give you an idea of what Arcana Crystal's worth. But we're not really a site that does simulations, right? We're not trying to replace SimCraft or anything like that, or Simulation Craft. What we're trying to do is kind of assess what you've already done, right? So we use log data, which is basically things that you've gone through and done as a player. We're not in the realm of like trying to, build like a bunch of simulations about, hey, if a fight went perfectly, here's how your gear would play out, right? We're more about, here's your log data, here's what actually happened. So here's where you either made mistakes or here's where you played well. Is kind of what we look at.
Very good. And so you mentioned that it's, things that you log. So is it specifically just for raids or is it dungeons as well? Could I see, what I'm doing incorrectly or correctly in a dungeon? Where can I improve?
No, I mean, I think the biggest issue right now with dungeons is just that the way Warcraft logs. So we're based on basically data coming out of Warcraft logs, right? We don't work without Warcraft logs available. And the way Warcraft logs splits up that stuff for dungeons is they split the boss fights away from the trash. So we essentially could tell you how you played on a boss fight in a dungeon, but really that's only about 50% of the time you spend in a dungeon. So we're missing the other 50%, which is the trash, right? So it's really not useful for dungeons. I wouldn't use it for dungeons personally. The fights are too short. There's not enough real data to pull in. So it's really just geared towards raiders at this point.
Cool.
And the other caveat there is for DPS players, we get this question a lot, is that it doesn't actually work on dummies. So you can't like sit and hit a dummy for 5 minutes and then go analyze how it went.
And then analyze your rotation afterwards. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so dummies don't give us enough information. It's actually the way WoW logs dummy fights. There's not enough information in the log for us to even do anything with. So
interesting.
It would only work inside a raid, yeah.
So you mentioned, you pull all of it from Warcraft logs as well. Do you work with Kira of Temerity at all in terms of, I know he's continued to looking to improve the Warcraft log site. Do you put things on his wish list that you'd like to see to pull then into WoWAnalyzer?
Yeah, I mean, we work with Kira just to kind of understand the API and kind of what data he has available and if he can make more of it available to us. So we've worked with him just to kind of understand API responses and how we interact with his site. And we've asked him for things, he's given us a couple things. So it's more of like, we need him. So like if he wants to say, if he says yes or no, we're kind of at the mercy of him. So we really just kind of ask for things. And then if we can get it, great. If we can't, we kind of work around it in our own way.
Okay, cool. One of our viewers asks, would it work for something like the Mage Tower specifically? Is that considered a boss fight where you could log that and pull it into WoWAnalyzer?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. I think the Mage Tower is considered more like a dungeon. So I mean, I don't know if it would particularly help you there. So yeah, I don't think so. No, I don't think we've ever had anybody log though a Mage Tower and try and run it through. But you're more than welcome to try. I don't know what the answer would give you though, unfortunately.
Okay. Cool. So going into a lot of the numbers, depending on the log, and one of my initial criticisms of WoWAnalyzer and Zero's, iteration a year ago was the maybes, right? Like the variables as a user, how accurate it is, giving me suggestions that may or may not be accurate. So I'll give you a couple examples. On a fight like Argus, right? As a holy paladin, I'm DPSing for the first bit, not doing a lot of healing because, someone else is healing. And same thing with Agrimar. With respect to casts like my Light of Dawn, I'm saving my Light of Dawns for when damage goes out, because there's no point in throwing heals out when it's going to be guaranteed over healing. I should save my Light of Dawns for when the big AoE hits, hit my Light of Dawn, and then hit my Holy Shocks on people, my Light of the Martyr as I'm moving, and that kind of stuff. But the suggestion from WoWAnalyzer would be something like, hey, you're not casting, Light of Dawn enough. How do you reconcile that? Like, how do I improve as a player when I know I shouldn't be casting this, but at the same time, WoWAnalyzer is telling me, hey, you should be casting this more, right? There's more dead time where you're just holding on to your Light of Dawns for no reason.
Yeah, so I think that's where with any tool, and WoWAnalyzer has included this, I think you need context. So I think you brought up a perfect point, and we actually get this a lot, which is like, not only with Light of Dawn, but you could say like raid CDs too is the same thing, right? If you're in a 6.5 minute fight, if you have a 3 minute cooldown, you can use that cooldown 3 times, and maybe based on your raid, you're only supposed to use it 2 specific points. But WoWAnalyzer will tell you, hey, you could have used this more. So we combat that. We combat that in basically 2 ways, right? The first way is essentially we don't suggest anything outside of a realm, right? So we don't expect perfect play. We don't expect you to hit 100% of all your spell casts on it that have a cooldown, right? I think that the default is an 80% cast rate. So as long as you hit it 80% of the time, or you've casted 80% of the chances you could have during a fight, we won't really suggest anything for you as a default. That's variable depending on exactly what the ability is, but for the most part, that's one way. The second way is what I mentioned was context, right? Is it's understanding, because WoWAnalyzer doesn't know, it's not smart enough to know, number one, your strat. So like if you have a specific cooldown order, like WoWAnalyzer is not going to know that. So that's going to be one thing that we're going to suggest you to potentially cast one of your raid cooldowns another time. But really, since we don't know your strat, like you as a player have to understand that, I have to cast it at these 2 specific points. There's no other place I can fit in a third. So that suggestion, while valid, is invalid for my specific, the way my guild specifically does this boss fight. And then the other issue, which is more of like a rotational cooldown, we'll call them, is like, for example, your Light of Dawn example on Agrimar. That again is coming down to context, right? Like unfortunately, WoWAnalyzer doesn't at this point understand enough about the individual boss fights to really provide boss specific suggestions, I'll say. It's something we're working on. It's something kind of in the back of our heads that, hey, we kind of need to get here. But at this point, it's not boss specific. So what you'll see is, our Agrimar is a good example. The best example I can give is the downtime suggestion, because a lot of times what we'll see is like players have a high amount of downtime. But a good example is on Argus, where you're dead for, I think, like 30-ish seconds of that fight automatically. In the WoWAnalyzer's case, that's just 30 seconds of you not doing anything, or you being dead. And we don't have enough data to pull back and say that's like the death phase of Argus. The same thing could be said of like the Kill Jaden fight, right? When he flew around the room in phase 2, like that's essentially dead time for almost every class. We just chalked it up as knowing the encounter. Like as a player, you have to know the encounter and understand the context. So we're getting better. That's one of the, probably the, at least in my mind, one of the larger gaps we have is we're lacking on boss specific suggestions and boss specific information, so that we can make our individual spec analyzers better. That's
great to know.
Sorry.
No,
yes,
that's fantastic. Go ahead.
Yeah, so ultimately, like with any tool, like you can use WoWAnalyzer to help you, or it can actually use it to hurt you if you don't understand the context of what it's telling you, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, that whenever folks, at least because I do a lot of the Mistweaver stuff, when folks come to me about Mistweaver issues in the analyzer, they're like, hey, it's totally wrong. Like in your case, Light of Dawn. In my case, it's like Revival. Like you should have been able to cast Revival another time. That's normally the answer I give them. It's all about context, right? It's understanding like what you were supposed to do in the fight, and as long as you did that, then be able to apply the suggestions to like your specific strategy. So it's not a one shot. Like if the WoWAnalyzer says to do it, go do it. You have to understand as a player, like, does it ultimately make sense with the way my guild and the way that I like the way I have to perform on this fight.
Awesome. So you mentioned, those downtimes, those dead times. One of our viewers asks, something like the pods on Antoran High Command, is that also consider, is there just not enough information on a fight like that to realize, you're doing, a pod duty, for instance?
No, yeah, I think pods are one we do not take into account. So if you were on pod duty on that fight, you would essentially be considered I guess AFK, or that downtime indicator would increase while you're in the pod. So
okay, cool. That's awesome. So we talked about, the different cooldowns, WoWAnalyzer, a bit of a history behind it. What are some really cool highlights from the creation of WoWAnalyzer that you guys have made? I remember Zero's initial iteration. What are some cool things that have been built since then?
Yeah, so I think the coolest thing in my mind is when we launched with what we called WoWAnalyzer 2.0 earlier this year. I think it was like in January. And essentially was launching with what we call the checklist, right? So before this, we basically had a bunch of suggestions, right? And as a player, when you pulled up the site and you saw like all these suggestions, and we categorized them as like major, minor, or just average, right? And you'd see like 5 major things, and you'd be like, well, great. Like I don't know which one to focus on. Like I'm either new, or like all these things seem like big things I should work on. So what we ended up doing was really Zero kind of retooled and kind of came up with the idea of the checklist, right? Which is basically categorizing those suggestions into groups and then giving that group a score, right? So for example, if we take, I'm just pulling up one of my Mistweaver logs, right? So a lot of times it's like using your core spells as often as possible. You might have a couple core spells, and maybe one of them you're really good at using, and maybe one of them you're really not good at using. So the idea here is like maybe you should kind of work on using that second spell better. The other idea is like being able to pick the right like tools, so making sure you have the right cooldowns or the right trinkets equipped, right, and that you're using them effectively. So for example, maybe you've taken a specific talent, and you're not getting the most use out of it. Maybe that's an indication that you should use a different talent. So the checklist in my mind is probably the biggest feature. And it kind of helps you organize like what areas of your play you need to focus on, and then inside of those areas, potentially specific things you can do better. So that's kind of the biggest change. The suggestions are still there. They're on a separate tab. So if you want to kind of look at all the detail behind it, but the checklist kind of brings it up and gives you like a nice to look at check mark X, like check and X of, hey, check marks you did well, X's you didn't do well. So it makes you as a player, and this is kind of why we did it, like feel a little bit better. Like I didn't do everything terribly. Like, hey, I ate food at the start of the fight, so that's one check. You know, I had all my right buffs. So that's kind of the one of the biggest feature. It's been around for a couple months now, but that was the big thing we did over the past year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, going through the checklist here on some of my own fights as I've got it pulled up, you know, it goes through different cooldowns and which cooldown specifically I need to work on. And it's not too overwhelming at a glance. It's a little bit easier. And, you know, things like, you know, non-healing time, for instance, does that include DPS time as well? So, you know, in my early example, it was, okay, well, I should be, you know, healing, but if it's just overhealing, should I be DPSing? Does that count towards my downtime?
Yeah, so we actually break up downtime into, if you're a healer, into 3 specific ones. It's healing time, so time spent casting healing spells or channeling healing spells. We have non-healing time, which is time casting non-healing spells, which essentially in your case DPS spells, and then we have basically AFK time, where you didn't cast anything at this point. So we kind of break it up. So you can see like, hey, maybe there wasn't always something to heal, but I still had time to do something, and that something should be DPSing the healer, right?
And does it give me benchmarks for, let's say I'm a new player and I want to improve, and yeah, it's telling me, you know, do this, but are there certain goals I should be attaining, let's say with respect to, you know, to casting more or better effectiveness of my mastery as a holy paladin? Are there better benchmarks, you know, 70% here, 80% here?
Yeah, so basically what we've done is behind the scenes we've kind of built those benchmarks into the system. So if you're looking at kind of the checklist, right, as long as it's green, you've hit the benchmark. And the benchmark's not always 100% like I mentioned earlier. So I can speak from experience doing the Mistweaver things. Like I've spoken to a bunch of the top Mistweaver players, and kind of built within the analyzer what the average is, right, or what you should at least be able to attain to. And then that becomes the benchmark. So as long as you're in the green, we call it, on the WoWAnalyzer, you're basically hitting that benchmark. And that benchmark is, like I said, not always 100%. Sometimes it's 80%. Sometimes it's less. You know what I mean? But we've kind of already built in those benchmarks into the way it presents the information. And like I mentioned, the baseline is 80% for most of your skills. So as long as you're hitting your skills about 80% of the time, you know, you're hitting the benchmark, at least from a default perspective. And then some of them have, you have the ability to basically modify those to be higher or lower depending on exactly what it is in respect to your spec.
Awesome. So you mentioned, sorry, go ahead, Midgets.
Well, I was going to ask, you know, because again, we've talked about the healers. Does this work with like interrupts and things like that? Because I know, especially for DPS, we have a lot of people who don't know how to interrupt.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't know if we actually show interrupts, but we don't normally kind of get into that sort of like specific thing of like, hey, you need to use a like, because that's more of a utility ability, right? But yeah, we can definitely track. So like in the WoWAnalyzer, there's the abilities tab, right, which shows you basically every ability that you can cast, and then if that ability has a cooldown associated to it or some sort of indicator that says you can't basically hit it every time. It'll show you how many casts you could have had in the course of the fight you're analyzing. So, for example, like, unfortunately, interrupts are weird. So it would basically tell you, like, you hit your interrupt, like, twice on a 8-minute fight, right, when you could have hit it. I don't know how many that would be, but a lot of other times, which isn't as helpful. It'll at least show you hit it twice. But it would be helpful for, say, an ability like Bloodthirst, right, which is one of your main abilities as a Fury Warrior. You only hit that like 5 times in a 5-minute fight when you could have hit it like probably 50 or 60, right? So we definitely can show that type of information. Just making sure you're hitting your buttons, and a lot of times, like that's the biggest issue we see is like folks just not hitting their buttons. So
They'll always be casting. I saw that on the site. I laughed because that's always been Sparty's favorite words.
That's right.
I can
Know your
encourage-
ABCs. Always be casting. That's right.
Yeah.
I love
always
it.
be casting, and it's a really good read on this site. What's your favorite feature?
So my favorite feature actually was the checklist we kind of talked about. So that's one of the best things I think we put in. One of the newer things we just put in was a death recap, which I think is actually really cool, which basically gives you the ability to show how you died and then what cooldowns or like say pots or anything like that you had available to you. So it'll show you like the couple events before your death, if you had any cooldowns up, and then if you had any available that you just didn't use. So it kind of gives you an idea.
Does it tell you if you didn't use your health stone?
Yeah, it'll show a little icon of a health stone, and that it's if it's lit up, it means you didn't use it and it was available. So
Can we put a sound with that of Sparty yelling?
we might be
beautiful.
able to add that in. So
Yeah, I love this death recap feature. I mean, I've been saying for years, every death is avoidable. And, did you use your cooldowns? Did you use your health pods, your health tonics, your health stones? And this is fantastic, right? Because every death is avoidable and tells you, right? Like what cooldowns you had available, how long till next ones, which ones you had up when you died. That's fantastic. Like that's an amazing feature for, people's survivability. Absolutely.
Yep.
And so what's coming next? I mean, can you talk about any new features on the horizon for WoWAnalyzer? Big things on your wish list coming up?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing coming up, we actually just launched it. I think we pushed it last night. Zero did was we launched Premium, WoWAnalyzer Premium, which is I hate plugging this type of stuff, but essentially what it is yeah. Well, and I think it's a little bit more focused here, right? So what we ended up doing is like from a premium perspective, right? It's not really to make money, right? It's really to kind of put money back into the system. So we kind of do this in two very specific ways, right? The first way is essentially like paying to host the site, like that's the standard thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the other way is we use a system or really a site called Bounty Source, which essentially allows us to tag issues that we have with the site, and these could be issues of things we want fixed or issues we want for new improvements, right? And basically tag them and then provide a dollar amount. So if somebody comes in and actually adds it or fixes it, they get the money. So it's a way to essentially support, if you don't have coding abilities, right? It's a way to support the site and actually get potential features implemented. So as much as we want to say like everybody loves to work on things and does this with a passion, right? A lot of us have that. A lot of times making $5 for an hour, 2 hours worth of work is something to kind of get people motivated in there. And the other way actually, so that's the one way is to we have a Patreon set up, you can subscribe and things like that. The other way to actually get premium is to actually push code. So if you have an interest in coding and you want to take on an issue, if you make a pull request and your code gets merged in our code base, you get premium for 30 days basically after that. So we've kind of got two incentives. If you don't have any coding ability and you have a couple extra bucks, you can give it to us and we'll kind of put that back into the system. And then the other way is if you actually do have some coding ability and you want to, lend your time, that's the other way to kind of get it. Right now, there's no specific premium features. But as we move forward, if a feature becomes something we put a ton of time in, a ton of work in, and people really enjoy it, that might be something that kind of gets gated. But the basic analysis and things like that will never be gated behind anything. So everything you see today kind of stays as is. It would only be something new that potentially gets put behind that. So.
This is fantastic because this whole concept is so community focused. It's not, we've built a tool. Okay, now come help support the tool and the money we've put behind it and that kind of stuff. But it's so like, yeah, you can code, you can do whatever, right? You're soliciting the community for support. It's not just a couple people, doing this thing. It's, it's very, very much community driven. And that's amazing because, initially it was just, Holy Paladins, and then, Zero expanded it to everybody else and more people have joined. You joined on top of this on WoWAnalyzer here with your limited time. And yeah, more people is better, right? I mean, it's why not use all these resources that you have, and people want to contribute. That's one thing I've learned over the years is they want to find a way to help, right? Whether it's throwing money at you guys and helping support, host the servers or whatever, or it's, letting their expertise. And, that kind of mindset and that philosophy is fantastic. So I definitely applaud that. That's amazing.
Well, and
Yeah.
I know when I was reading it, I saw that you guys had what, 60 people at least at this point, 60 contributors. And it was actually kind of interesting. It said January 31st, 2017 was the launch of the first version of WoWAnalyzer. It's grown to over 60 contributors, 36 specs with over 1,500 files and over 150,000 lines of code. I thought that sentence was really, wow, that's a lot. So that's great, though.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's a lot bigger. I think we hit over 200,000 lines of code just a couple weeks ago with all the BFA stuff we're doing. But yeah, I mean, I think that's how it started, right? We don't like, for me personally, right? I got involved. There used to be a site called Check My WoW, which was run by one of the old brewmaster monks. He expanded it. It was a solo project for him, and he tried to kind of add support to all these sites or all these specs. And I actually got involved trying to provide him with suggestions and like, hey, for Mistweavers, this is what I'd like to do. And I saw that Zero was kind of doing this thing on the side, like launching something that potentially I could get involved in. And that's kind of how I jumped in, was like, I had all these things that I wanted to do that with one person doing it, like you kind of have more control, but you lose a lot of the ability to kind of have the breadth, right? You kind of end up only having a site that can support a narrow viewpoint potentially, right? So with this, basically opening up to the community, letting anybody who wants to come and contribute, we kind of get a lot more contributions in general, just a lot more like good code and good examples and good support for these specs, right? Because there's no way one person is going to be able to play all 36 specs and have the knowledge to kind of build the type of suggestions that we have in here and the type of analysis that we do. So that's kind of the biggest thing in my mind, is just like, hey, if you want to get involved, if you have an idea, if you think you're good at this, like even if you think you're bad at this, right? You just want to kind of learn more about coding. Like this is an idea to take something you're probably invested in, which is WoW, and kind of apply that to potentially something you might enjoy. You just don't know yet, which is coding or something like that. So.
Well, that's really incredible. And I think as it grows, it's going to continue to be an awesome tool for the community. We've got a lot of people, though, that maybe they've never heard of you before, or they come to your site and they're like, oh my goodness, what do I do with it? So what kind of tips would you give to a new player? Because we talked about, some of the challenges with a little bit more experienced players, but what about the new players that they've just come back, they haven't played for 5 years, or they're a brand new player, or they're just now exploring getting into raiding? Give us a little bit of a rundown of what you would suggest they do when they got there.
Yeah, so I think, using WoWAnalyzer, I think you end up having to have a basic understanding of your spec first, right? So the underlying thing is, like, if you're just coming back, like, first of all, learn about your spec, like learn what you're supposed to be doing, because like I mentioned earlier, like WoWAnalyzer is going to give a lot of tips, going to give a lot of suggestions, right? But without the context of potentially what you should be doing, you're going to potentially run down a path of just following it blindly, right? So, my first advice would be to like join your class Discord, like join your spec Discord, read your Wowhead, guides, read your Icy Vein, just learn a lot about what you want to do, right? Particularly around raiding and what your role is. And then once you've done that, once you've got at least a basic understanding, just load up your character. Like we added in the ability to search for your character. So you don't even need to have a specific log. You might not be the type of person who does log. You might just join a bunch of pugs, and somebody might upload the logs from the pugs for the night on Warcraft logs, and you can search for your character. It's something we added probably about 3 or 4 months ago. And they'll pull up all your logs available, and you can kind of analyze one of those from the night. So that's where I would start, would be, first of all, understand your spec. And then from there, start to dive in and understand exactly what it's telling you. Because again, if you follow this blindly, like with any tool, you're potentially going to go down, you're going to have some pitfalls. You're going to have some mess ups. So that would be my advice, is you don't even need to log, just kind of search for your character, see if there's logs out there, and then click and see what you did wrong, see what you did right, and kind of go from there.
That's awesome. That's those are great tips for players on Analyzer. And how do we get in contact with you? How do we support the team? Where is your Discord, your Twitter, your GitHub, all those things?
Yeah, so we are at it's just wowanalyzer.com/Discord. It'll take you right to our Discord. it'll kind of forward you over there, so you can join there. A bunch of different channels. A lot of it's really just people who can contribute. I didn't realize we have like a couple, I think it was a couple hundred people in there, but really only about 30 or 40 people talk. But that's where if you need support, if something breaks on the site, if you find an issue, if you don't think something right, definitely head over to Discord. That'd be the first place to start. And then our GitHub is just github.com/WoWAnalyzer. That's why you'll find the code repository. Everything we do is open source. So you can see all the code, you can see all the magic if that stuff, if you understand that stuff. And if you want to get involved and kind of start checking off issues, I think we have about 130 issues open right now. So you're more than welcome to kind of pick one of those up and add to the improvements. So
that's awesome. And a quick little anecdote. When I was given my guild website about 14 years ago, the original coder, I mean, it's held together by duct tape at this point. It's such an old website. He just gave it to me because he was quitting. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how to, code in PHP. So I'm going to figure things out by breaking things. And as I cut paste code, I see what goes to where. And I'm sure you guys will let me do that, right? You'll just let me just break things and figure things out, maybe?
Well, you can break things on your local machine or your local instance. More than happy to. But to actually get any code, there's a whole approval process before we can let you do that. So.
That's probably a good thing.
Probably a good idea.
So what kind of help are you looking for? Are you looking for coders? Are you looking for theory crafters? What classes or specs are you in the most demand for right now?
I mean, I think at this point, a lot of it's really all over the place, right? So I mean, I think a couple of the tanks really could use some love, like Protection Paladin. So if you're a Protection Paladin, definitely get in there. Surprisingly, the rogue specs are pretty unsupported at this point. I think Outlaw is probably the only one that's fairly up to date. So like rogue specs, and essentially what we're looking for, I guess I should start with not specs, but people, right? I mean, we kind of have this mantra that like really all you need to get involved is like the desire to probably help support something, and you can start small. Like the way we built the system is it's very modular. So like when you guys load up the analysis of something, it's pretty detailed, right? But every one of those little boxes you see is like one small part of the code. So you can even work on like one small box to show like the uptime on a buff or something like that to kind of get your feet wet. But really want somebody who kind of wants to get involved, wants to do it, but then also that has an understanding of their class. And that's kind of the one, not gray area, but difficult thing to kind of track for, is that you got to basically understand what you're doing. And if you have the backing of your theory crafters for your class, or you potentially are one, definitely get involved, definitely help us out. Because I think that's where a lot of the knowledge comes in about what you should be doing or should not be doing. So that's kind of where the theory crafting part comes in. But you don't really need to have that. You can always jump in your class Discord and be like, hey, I'm going to work on WoWAnalyzer, and I think this is a good suggestion. What do you guys think? And a lot of times that we've seen, the people who've done that, they've gotten some really good feedback. So I think that's kind of the two big things, is like at least a general understanding of what spec you're working on, and then just a desire to kind of learn the code, learn the back end. And the system, like I said, like I'm not a programmer by trade. That's not what I do in my real life. This is a hobby for me, and I was able to pick it up. So it's not super difficult. You just got to have, basically you got to be Sparty, right? You have to try and break it on your own. And then once you start getting it to work, it becomes definitely a little bit easier. So
that's right. You just got to figure out what different cogs do, what different puzzle pieces do. And then, it eventually, you learn how to do these things.
Exactly.
So is there anything that we didn't ask that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I think you guys hit on pretty much everything. I think the biggest thing, right, is just kind of, if you want to get involved, if you have suggestions, like kind of hop over to Discord, hop on our GitHub, contribute some code. Like I said, we did just launch WoW Premium. So if you want to support that way, that's great. Or if you want to pick up one of our bounty sources, definitely head out there. I think that we have like 3 or 4 of them out there right now. So I mean, I think we hit on pretty much everything. So I mean, next is just making sure we're ready for BFA, which there's a lot still to be done. It's funny, BFA is coming quick, I think, not only for the WoW devs, but for us at this point. So
for sure. And you know what? That just one of our viewers says, wow, I just hopped on this site. I never heard of it, but it's perfect for me going to BFA. That's exactly right. I mean, we need to expose this site to so many more people, and it's such an easy to use tool where people don't need to use Warcraft logs, don't need to be able to read Warcraft logs. This disseminates everything for you. It's a very much an automatic tool. It's so easy. Sparty can use it. It's fantastic. And, thank you so much for your time here. It's been super enlightening, and we definitely want to continue to support WoWAnalyzer going forward. I mean, it's awesome. It's a great tool, and thank you so much for everything you've contributed to it.
Definitely. Thank you very much for having me. It was a great talk. Great to talk to you guys.
Well, you want to stick around and hear our about our guild survivor and our Ponder Wowza?
I cannot wait. Actually, I'm super excited. So this is why I joined in the first place for this. So.
Yeah, for those of you joining us now, so our last little segment here in Guild Survivor we call Ponder Wowza. For those of you that are Survivor fans or of Ponderosa, we bring back a number of the players that were voted off from previous Guild Survivor episodes. Guild Survivor airs every Monday at 10 o'clock Eastern. 2 guilds, 2 tribes, competing in different challenges, PvE, PvP, a lot of fun ones from tightrope challenges to we did Soccerfish, and there's a transmog stuff. There's so many unique contests that are not just, raiding or PvP or whatever. And it runs just like Survivor, where the losing tribe votes somebody out until you eventually go down to, one big tribe and individual immunity challenges, and you keep competing. And we don't have people, vote for the winner. We're actually going to have the winners compete in a final head-to-head challenge for the title of Sole Survivor, as well as the multi-million gold prize. Hopefully, it's going to help them with their dinosaur mount in BFA. But we're going to bring back Lionel and Talmudim, which were voted off in previous episodes. Let's pull them into channel.
Well,
All right. Hello, Talmudim. Hello. Let's unmute these guys. Here, Midgettes will on the server mute. There we go. Perfect. 1 and 2. All right. So, hello, Lionel. Hey, Talmudim. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you? How's everyone tonight?
We're fantastic. We had a great chat with Justin here from WoWAnalyzer. We're bringing you guys in as, you guys did have an awesome time in Guild Survivor, I hope. Yeah? Had fun?
Totally. Absolutely.
Totally.
And so, Lionel, which you were in the Zeros to Heroes tribe, definitely one of the newer players in Zeros to Heroes in our community. And what was your overall thought? I mean, you signed up for Guild Survivor. Did you know what it was when you came in?
I had my ideas of what it was, but I didn't know what I was getting into.
And having experienced what you experienced, would you do it again?
Most definitely.
And what was your favorite part of Guild Survivor so far that you had competed in?
I really actually enjoyed the speed runs and everything. PvP not my forte though.
Was that the episode you were voted out on? The PvP one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's too bad. But it was fun. It was awesome having you around, and it's not just a contest for people that have been around the community for a long time. It was great to have people like you that are new and want to be part of something awesome, and we definitely want to be doing more and more Guild Survivors like this. But Talmudim, I mean, you were the beast from Zeros to Heroes. We went head to head with Iron Den in the duel. What's some of your highlights from Guild Survivor so far?
Well, the highlights was just more so like after getting, knowing people like on the DJ's team, and then getting to know the people on the ZTH team, and actually knowing what Survivor was. Like when we went into at first we started with Strand of the Ancients, and you were kind of like the commentator on the side and nobody attacked you, to going forth to the Transmog Challenge where, one of my teammates whispered me, say something corny like I'm a grinder because whatnot, and just trying to do what we can just to keep it entertaining. I just totally loved it. But the most memorable was just dueling Iron Dan. We were both at 1% health, and it was just an extra cast that just separated us, and it was just so great, and I'm glad I lasted as long as I did.
That's awesome. Well, going into it, so you were voted out post tribe switch, and actually let's go back to Lionel first. Why do you think you were voted out, Lionel? In the PvP episode.
I had a job to do. They said find this person and kill them, and I just couldn't do it. Then, which I feel like me failing the mission just kind of got me voted off.
Who were you looking for? Were you looking for the bonus person?
Yeah, the bonus. I can't think of his name.
I think it was Ariana. Yeah, Ariana's was pretty well hidden. And so there was talk of secret advantages. Do you guys have any suspicion as to what the advantages would be or are?
If you don't mind me asking, as in context of strategy, or?
Yeah, so typically in Guild or in Survivor itself, there's advantages, whether it be extra votes or immunity idols or steal a vote or, you're immune or part of a super idol. There's so many different permutations of advantages. Or, for instance, your team gets to start earlier on an encounter. We've done different variations of advantages as well. But do you guys have any ideas or what you guys would want for an advantage? Talmudim?
I
Delano?
think and an advantage would be telling a good joke to you and getting your approval.
that that's a good
I
advantage.
don't think that's a good advantage at all.
It's okay, Talmudin. It's just like your dueling skills.
Oh,
Oh.
And there's chirping going on. And so Tal, you were voted out post tribe switch. So at that point, I believe it was 7 aside, 4 DJs and 3 ZTH, and they voted you off in the tribe that lost the Soccerfish challenge. Why do you believe you were voted off?
so I instantly had a theory behind it from the get-go because Iron Dan kind of implied it is keep the strong, eliminate the weak. Oh, well, kind of this for his team. But in this case, against the enemy, it was more so eliminate what's perceived as the strong players because, it didn't make sense my team to vote me off when not trying to boast, but I was able to win the Transmog challenge that gave us immunity, and that's how Epic got voted off. And so it just made sense. There's 3 ZTH, there's 4 DJs. Obviously, they're going to try to attack internally from within and try to keep the DJs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's a fairly common strategy where you'll keep the the original tribe strong or the original guild strong. The tribe you're on, I think it was Hyenas. I can't recall.
Yes, sir.
Had 4 DJs, 3 zeros to heroes. The other tribe had 4 zeros to heroes and 3 DJs, I believe. So I mean, a numbers disadvantage. Do you think at all the your guys threw the challenge at all to vote out more zeros to heroes? Is there any strategy behind that? Is there any reason to it?
Honestly, without, assuming, it is really hard to say because Scan, being as nice as he was, saying there was no hard feelings. But, you always got to think back to, the strategy. And that's why I keep lingering on, they're trying to eliminate what they think is strong players. So in case something does happen where you switch and avert back to your original teams, it's perceived that, say, A or B is stronger than the said variable.
For sure. No, I mean, that's a totally viable strategy, and that might very well be why you were voted out. So knowing that you have a really awesome speed set, Soccerfish, was that your challenge? Was that, one of your best challenges in terms of performance?
Absolutely. I had a lot of practice when we were on Kingaroth just for this opportunity.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for your exit interviews with WoW Ponderosa. Much appreciated to both of you guys. Thanks a ton, Lionel and Talmudim. And hopefully we'll see you guys watching more Guild Survivor Mondays at 10 o'clock Eastern.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, with that, guys, it goes down. We're bringing down to our the final segment of our show. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys ever have suggestions for more guests that you want to see on our podcast, bestslot at gmail.com, let us know. I mean, tweet us. Tell us what you think. Give us suggestions, ideas, whatever. See us on stream. We'll see you guys typically every Monday, Sundays for our podcast, and of course, our regular streams throughout the week. Thank you again, Justin and Anomoly, for your time here. That was fantastic. Great insights on WoWAnalyzer. If you guys haven't used WoWAnalyzer yet after this podcast, please do go check it out. There's a lot of good support out there for making you guys better players, and that's what we're all about: a better community, better players out there, and really help support WoWAnalyzer, whether it be coding or through throwing money at them, because they deserve it with what they've done so far. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good night. Be excellent to each other. And as always, live your life heroically. Have a fantastic evening.